So, Kingdom Hearts. As we quickly approach the 3-year mark since the reveal of the first and so far only trailer for Kingdom Hearts 4, the fandom has started to show signs of fatigue, I guess you could say. But while everyone's focus has been on looking toward what's to come, I've recently found myself more interested in what came before, specifically where it all started. You see, the thing is about Kingdom Hearts, or the original at least, is that discussion around it typically sees it through the lens of being a single part to a greater whole, connecting it with the rest of the series. Now, there are probably much more smarter and well-versed people out there than me who can give you all the in-depth analysis about the lore and the theories and all that stuff about the overarching narrative of the Kingdom Hearts series. But I wanted to take a look at Kingdom Hearts as it was back in 2002 when it first came out. You know, before there were Keyblade Wars or Organization 13 or a real Organization 13 or Xehanort clones and all that stuff. I just want to look at it as it was when it was first come up with back then, which was essentially the answer to someone's very weird question: what would happen if we smashed our Final Fantasy action figures together with our Disney action figures? According to an interview with Tetsuya Nomura in 2004, Kingdom Hearts originated in the late 90s after a chance encounter between Square producer Shinji Hashimoto and an unnamed Disney executive when they ran into each other in an elevator, and allegedly Hashimoto pitched the game right there. The executive liked it, and so Square began development. With a relatively wet-eared Tetsuya Nomura at the helm, who had never taken a lead directorial role before, his initial approach to Kingdom Hearts was surprisingly very reserved. Originally, the game was intended to have a very simplistic story to better appeal to the nose-pickers and snot-eaters that were Disney's target demographic. However, during a meeting between Nomura and producer Hironobu Sakaguchi, it was suggested to Nomura that the game reach for a level of storytelling that was on par with a Final Fantasy game. It was really shaping up to be something special, but there was one problem. A really big problem. In a 2020 article written by the former VP for Disney Interactive's Asia branch, it turned out that Square had spent at least a year in active development on Kingdom Hearts without ever getting any formal approval from Disney. Square apparently thought that the elevator pitch was all they needed to go into full production, but the truth was that there was no one in Japan who had the authority to greenlight such a project. So imagine Michael Eisner's surprise when he went to Japan to inspect one of the new theme parks, only to be met by a Disney Interactive executive sweating bullets trying to convince him to approve this weird Disney anime boy crossover game that they'd already dumped millions of dollars into. Fortunately, Eisner was receptive to the idea. So, after taking a very big sigh of relief, Kingdom Hearts officially went into production in February of 2000. Then, a little over a year later, it would finally make its debut at 2001's E3 event. And what the audience saw, I can safely say, was unlike anything they'd ever seen before. Now, at the time it came out, Kingdom Hearts 1 was just absolutely jaw-droppingly beautiful. And I think the graphics to this day still hold up, if only because of it having such a very powerful and distinct art direction. But graphics weren't the only thing that it had going for it. You know, the gameplay was phenomenal as well, especially for the time. But the thing that I believe truly ascended Kingdom Hearts from being just a JRPG with Disney characters in it into being a truly wonderful and whimsical childhood adventure was the music. Through the 90s and into the early 2000s, Squaresoft had never missed when it came to music, and Kingdom Hearts was clearly no exception. They had a lot of very strong candidates, from Nobuo Uematsu, who is practically the godfather of Final Fantasy, to Yasunori Matsuda, who can drop banger after banger after banger like it's no one's business. Ultimately, they ended up going with Yoko Shimomura, who, even among a stable of legendary composers, was really the only correct choice. Music has always been a major part of Disney's identity. No matter what era of Disney you look at, their scores never exist in the background, but rather exist on the same plane as the media it's accompanying. It's one thing for music to underscore the mood of a scene, but it's another thing entirely to utilize musical cues that correlate directly with what's happening on screen, all the way down to a cinematographic level. It's not a uniquely Disney quality, but it is a distinctive quality of Disney. And as such, Square needed a composer who could deliver a score that felt like not only could it complement Kingdom Hearts, but that it could also be a part of Kingdom Hearts. Nobuo Uematsu is a great composer, but he's a prog rock guy. He likes to venture into experimental, oftentimes weird territories. It's great for Final Fantasy, but not really great for something like Disney. Most of the time. Shimomura, though, she brings a certain level of unidentifiable whimsy to her work that is very reminiscent of many Disney films, and she puts that on full display in Kingdom Hearts, bringing in many songs that you could have swore were ripped straight from the movies, but were actually completely original pieces. And Kingdom Hearts' main theme exemplifies this in every way possible. Hikari, or Simple and Clean as it was known outside of Japan, wasn't written by Shimomura, but rather by Japanese pop artist Hikari Utada, and it plays like a radio pop song. A good radio pop song, but still a radio pop song, and not really something you'd associate with Disney on its own. However, Shimomura's orchestral rendition of it is just so magical. I wouldn't say it's Disney coded necessarily, but it certainly is childhood coded. This is the sort of music you hear in your head when you think back to days of playing pretend with your friends before you had to deal with the daily agonies of adulthood and responsibility. It's the music that sparks feelings of childlike awe and wonder, no matter how long forgotten those feelings might be. And that is precisely the sort of thing Kingdom Hearts strives for. Now, you may be asking yourself, why are we talking about this? Like, why are we talking about music and vibes and things like that? Well, I feel it's really important to understand the sort of mind space this game is trying to put you in. You know, this game isn't about ancient Keyblade lore or pretty anime boys in black coats. It's just about a child on an adventure to find his friends, while also making other friends along the way, and then also exploring how those bonds grow over time. It's a very Disney-style story, and the game tries to put you into the mindset of watching a Disney movie. And I think it's really important to point out and understand the lengths that this game goes to solidify that direction. Jumping into it, the opening hours of Kingdom Hearts really is a masterclass in how to start a game. So many games suffer from having these long, drawn-out opening segments that typically spend more time expositioning at you than they do reeling you into the setting. Kingdom Hearts instead creatively takes advantage of that lack of context by utilizing dreamlike imagery that's as fascinating as it is mysterious. You see bright and brilliantly colorful stained glass paintings of familiar Disney princesses framed by an endless sea of ominous darkness, while haunting music plays in the background, making it feel not entirely scary, but simply strange. Then you have Final Fantasy characters asking you about your personal hopes and dreams and outlooks on life, and at this point you're probably asking yourself, what the fuck is going on? Alright, look. Yes, we all know these questions are there to set up your XP curve, but if you take a moment to actually look at your potential answers, you'll realize these aren't surface-level questions. Take Titus's question. He asks you what you're afraid of. A very straightforward question, but the choices you're given go much deeper than your typical everyday fears. Getting old, being different, being indecisive. Instead of asking you for something material and tangible, like a fear of the dark, or needles, or spiders, or whatever, it's asking you to look inward, to give a very thoughtful answer. Are you afraid of growing old and stepping further away from the charms of youth while getting ever closer to the impending inevitability of death? Are you afraid of not fitting in with those around you and being pushed away into a life of loneliness and isolation while desperately seeking the acceptance and affection of others? Or are you afraid of being indecisive? Afraid that you'll simply go with the flow, being guided by the wills of others until eventually you realize that the life you're living isn't the one you can truly call your own? These are real, mature fears. Fears that kids that fit into the E for everyone demographic aren't typically asking themselves, because their scope of life just isn't really that broad yet. These are, however, questions that many teenagers may find themselves asking as they begin their awkward transition from childhood into adulthood. Keep that last part in mind. We'll come back to it later. Once you're out of the dream segment, the game makes a hard tonal shift by taking on a tone more typical of the opening hours of a JRPG, where everything is happy and idyllic before getting absolutely fucked. However, one thing I find noteworthy about the Destiny Island segment is what Sora, Riku, and Kairi's goal is. They want to build a raft and leave the island to go visit other worlds. It's a pretty quaint desire that I think everyone has had at some point as a kid, imagining what lies past the tree line outside your house, or what sort of wide world exists beyond the bridge out of town. Although it is an overall insignificant goal, it does serve to showcase the different mindsets Sora, Riku, and Kairi approach it with. Sora's got that wide-eyed puppy mentality of, hell yeah, let's build a raft and see where it takes us, while Kairi seems more down for whatever as long as it means spending time with her friends. But Riku, on the other hand, is locked the fuck in. To him, this isn't just a childish venture, but a real chance to get off the island and go see the rest of the world. There's also this weird homeless guy squatting in a cave and spouting philosophy at you or something. I don't know, it'll probably be important later.
One who knows nothing can understand nothing.
Anyways, bad shit happens, world goes poof, and Sora's adventure starts for real. Now, I'm not going to analyze every single world Sora travels to. Most of them are just loose renditions of the movies they're based on, and the stories themselves are very simple, with some worlds able to be completed in as short as 30 minutes, even with cutscenes. What I do find worth talking about, though, is the way the game goes about making and presenting these worlds. It's actually a pretty commendable feat to have this many different art directions and styles spread across worlds, and still be able to blend them together in a way that makes Sora, Donald, and Goofy not feel entirely out of place. For the most part. Are those clown shoes you're wearing? No. I know I'm trying to look at this game on its own merits without analyzing it against the sequels, but there are many choices that were made when it came to incorporating Disney worlds in Kingdom Hearts 1 that I think deserve to be highlighted. But to highlight what Kingdom Hearts did right, it's best to be able to compare it to something that did it, well, wrong. Not counting the, I guess you could call them, in-between segments like Disney Castle or optional worlds like Atlantica and 100 Acre Wood, Kingdom Hearts 2 had 9 fully realized Disney worlds you could go to, with only 4 of them having their main stories incorporated into the overarching plot of the game, those being Steamboat Willie, Tron, Beast Castle, and arguably Halloween Town. The rest of them just kinda exist independently of the story surrounding Organization 13, with only some of them becoming tangentially relevant on what are honestly tedious revisits that pad out the second half of the game. And don't even get me started on Kingdom Hearts 3, holy shit. Compare that to Kingdom Hearts 1, where out of the 8 main Disney worlds you visit, all but one of them are tied directly to the main story in some way, shape, or form. be it either through the Council of Villains or the worlds having actual major story beats occur in them. The only exception is Tarzan's world, and even that one at least holds a MacGuffin that you need to get to the next part of the game. It feels like every Disney world is meant to serve a purpose to the larger narrative. The stories might be simple and maybe even boring at times, but it doesn't feel like I'm just running through these worlds for the sake of running through them. Also, it makes Sora's relationship with these characters on these worlds feel more natural. He has a clear goal of looking for Riku and Kairi, so when he runs into the protagonists of these worlds who are going through their own problems, it feels like they're both trying to help each other out, and that makes the camaraderie they develop feel more real, I guess. Especially compared in Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3, where Sora's presence on these worlds is just to fulfill a checklist of keyholes that need sealing. But looking past the comparisons, one thing that Kingdom Hearts, and the sequels for that matter, do well is just the general vibe of adventuring with these Disney characters. It's like something straight out of the imagination of a child playing pretend, and it leans into it in a way that feels deeply wholesome and endearing. Even the interactions with the Final Fantasy characters hits this to an extent as well. But instead of being buddies you're palling around with, they're mentor figures that are trying to help guide you along the way. Which, from the perspective of a young child who played Final Fantasy games or watched family members play them, you see these characters like Squall or Cloud and think they're the coolest person in the world, and then see them acknowledge Sora, and by extension the player, with a sense of respect. It just makes you feel all giddy and shit. Also, quick shout out to Sid, who after meeting a random kid who came in off the streets, said that he'd take them in and take care of them without giving a second thought to it. Here's to you, Sid, for being the dad who stepped up. Speaking of the Final Fantasy characters, as the game's official mentor figures, it naturally becomes their responsibility to take the role of designated exposition droppers, which in true Nomura fashion, they have a lot of. I don't think that I need to take the time to explain what a Heartless is to you. If you're still sticking around this far into the video, I think it's pretty safe to say that you're locked in when it comes to 25-year-old Kingdom Hearts lore. What I will say about them is that the simplicity of their nature makes them work really well for the game. One of the worst things you can do for an antagonist that's meant to be cut down in droves is to make them too complicated. Heartless are hearts that have fallen to darkness. That's it. The physical body disperses, the Heartless comes out, the bad people control the Heartless, and they do bad things. There's a certain level of beauty in the simplicity of it. It's black and white, good and evil. Very much the type of opposing force that's indicative of the simplistic nature of classic Disney villains. But as Sakaguchi had said to Nomura early in the game's development cycle, the game needed to have more than just a simple story. Kingdom Hearts manages to thread a very fine needle, which is its ability to interweave a fairly nuanced story about two friends drifting apart, while presenting it in a very digestible format. When Sora finally meets up with Riku again, Riku is different. He's colder, more distant, and comes across as if he sees Sora as being beneath him. Obviously, this is because he's being manipulated by someone who self-identifies as the mistress of all evil, but beneath that, there is a deeper commentary being made. Sora and Riku's relationship is far from unique. We've seen this dynamic play out dozens of times before. A bright-eyed, plucky protagonist contrasted by a serious, aloof rival that loses their way before eventually coming back to the light because the bright-eyed, plucky protagonist never gave up on them. But just because an idea is played out doesn't mean that it can't be done well. And the shifting dynamics between Sora and Riku is, in my opinion at least, one of Kingdom Hearts' strongest points. Not just in this game, but in all the games. Sora and Riku's conflict actually doesn't start when Riku falls into Maleficent's influence. It starts at the very beginning of the game, when it's established that Riku is taking the whole leaving the island to travel to other worlds thing much more seriously than Sora is. Riku and Sora are at different points in their lives. Sora is happy to be doing kid stuff, play fighting with his friends, bumming around on the island, and just going off on ill-thought misadventures. We even get a glimpse of his room, which is filled with toys and things you'd associate more with a 10 to 11-year-old, rather than a 14-year-old like Sora. Riku, on the other hand, is tired of just playing pretend. He wants to go off and venture into the unknown, to evolve and grow, to pass through the doorway into adulthood. He believes, genuinely, that he is ready to grow up, but he doesn't want to do it alone, so he wants to pull Sora and Kairi along with him, even if they may not be ready for it yet. Once the two find each other after escaping the island, Riku finds it frustrating that Sora is off palling around with a free-balling duck and a dog whose actual, real name is Goofy Goof, believing that Sora isn't taking the finding Kairi thing as seriously as he should be. And maybe he is right to some extent. Every clash Riku and Sora has is centered in some way around Riku's belief that Sora is immature and needs to grow up, and the game gets really ham-fisted with it. But as much as Riku wants to be an adult, he is very far from being one. The first thing that happens the moment he steps foot off the island is he gets scooped up by someone much older, wiser, and way more manipulative than he is. He thinks he's a grown-up, but in actuality, he's just a puppet dancing to the tune of the real adults in the room. So all this gives us a story about two friends in two polar opposite points in their lives. One who's growing up too fast, while the other is perhaps not growing up fast enough. It's not a coincidence that a game where you go on adventures with your literal childhood heroes has themes about growing up. But it's not really until the last third of Kingdom Hearts that those themes really start to come into play. After being defeated by Sora, Riku starts to come to the very sobering realization that he is in way over his head, and starts grabbing at anything that might be able to give him some sort of edge, which he finds in the form of that weird homeless guy from earlier. Although Ansem is introduced very early in the game as a mysterious figure, he spends the vast majority of it MIA. What you learn about him as the game goes on is more incidental than anything. The only direct mention of him in dialogue comes from the Final Fantasy gang talking about how he was this really smart dude from back home. Everything else you learn about him is through scattered reports. And looking at them, you'll pretty quickly come to realize that this guy might be morally dubious. Ansem is a wise man, a scholar, a studier of logic and science. He seeks to understand everything. He wants to know everything.
One who knows nothing can understand nothing.
In many ways, he is the antithesis of childhood innocence. He doesn't care about sentimentality. He only cares about furthering his pursuit of understanding the universe by whatever means it takes to achieve that, even if it means destroying his own home. Now, I'm not saying that Kingdom Hearts is anti-intellectual or anything like that. That'd be stupid. No, I'm just saying that Ansem, as someone who is willing to throw away everything they ever had solely for the pursuit of knowledge, pretty much makes him the ultimate antagonist of a game that relishes in childhood nostalgia. And in a lot of ways, that also makes Ansem much more indicative of a Final Fantasy endgame villain rather than a Disney one. When you look at Disney villains, they're almost always working within the confines of a pre-existing system. Ursula wants to be Queen of the Sea. Jafar wants to be Sultan. Hades wants to be the ruler of Olympus. They seek power and domination over a system that already exists. Ansem, on the other hand, wants to overthrow and destroy all of the systems. He himself ruled over a pre-established system. He was the king, effectively, of Hollow Bastion, or Radiant Garden, if you want to be technical about it. And he just cast that all away in the pursuit of his knowledge of darkness. A pursuit of a thesis that itself is built on his own nihilistic philosophy, which pits him not only as an antagonist against the characters, but also as an antagonist to the very themes of the game's narrative. So Riku, believing that his weakness came from him still clinging on to those sentimental things, opens his heart to Ansem, and in doing so, falls to darkness. This makes Ansem more or less the embodiment of all the worst aspects of adulthood. He is literally consigning the worlds of Disney movies into oblivion. Call it on the nose if you will, but it is a very apt metaphor. How many movies or TV shows or books or made-up worlds that you and your friends played in when you were a kid have just been completely forgotten about, having become foggy, distant memories that invoke feelings of lost nostalgia? That's a part of what growing up is, or at least it can be. To have these once treasured things vanish into obscurity because there's just no place for them in your world anymore. So, it creates the question, is everyone doomed to at some point become Ansem? He certainly seems to believe so.
You see, darkness is the heart's true essence.
He sees darkness as an inevitability, a foregone conclusion that can't be escaped and instead should be embraced. And this perspective is ultimately what becomes his undoing. You see, Ansem is correct about one thing. One who knows nothing can understand nothing. Riku didn't understand what it meant to be an adult because he still didn't truly know the value of having a strong support system, be it through his friends, family, or otherwise. This made him prone to the influence of those who sought to manipulate him. Ansem didn't understand what Kingdom Hearts was, because he didn't truly know what the world was like outside of the scope of his own narrow perspective. So he built a hypothesis that he never realized was fundamentally flawed. Then there's Sora, who did understand what Kingdom Hearts was, because he did know what the worlds were like. Through his adventures with Donald, Goofy, Hercules, Tarzan, Ariel, and all those Disney characters that have served as influential figures for millions upon millions of children across the world, he learned that although there are some bad people out there, most of them are good, kind people that want what's best for everyone. Even though a lot of them may be misguided or misled, that doesn't mean they're not well-meaning. These are the sort of lessons that are best learned in childhood, because without them, one easily becomes cynical and jaded as an adult, and by that point, your worldview is much slower and much less receptive to change. And that is what Kingdom Hearts is about. It is a wholesome and, quite frankly, timeless story that I believe will hold up for any child or even adolescent who plays it today. When Nomura sought to make the perfect blend of a Final Fantasy and Disney game, he really achieved that in ways that I don't believe future Kingdom Hearts games were ever able to. You know, and that's not to say that I think Kingdom Hearts 2 or 3 or any of the spin-offs are bad games. I actually think they're quite good games, and in many ways improved upon a lot of the aspects of the original. But when it comes to having a sense of direction and vision, basically, I don't think any of the Kingdom Hearts games were ever able to quite hit the mark that Kingdom Hearts 1 did. And with that, Sora begins his own transition into adulthood. The barriers separating all the worlds return, but the worlds that were lost to darkness also begin lighting up the sky once more. Those Disney worlds that Sora went on all those adventures on are now closed off to him. Yet, though he can't return to them, the memories of his time there still persist in the form of stars bringing light to the darkness of the night sky. So long as Disney continues to remain in the public zeitgeist, I think that Kingdom Hearts 1 will always have a place for its target demographic, be it 10, 20, or even 30 years from now. While its gameplay and level design certainly show its age, it still holds up really well, broadly speaking. In terms of graphics, yeah, it's old, but it wields such a strong and distinguishable art direction that it doesn't even really matter. If you don't believe that, then just look at the movies that were represented in the game. Many of them are over or at least pushing 30 years old and still look good. Hell, Pinocchio is almost 90, and it's still perfectly watchable. And also, have you seen the games that kids play these days? Graphics don't mean a whole hell of a lot to them. I think it's important to be able to take a step back and look at where it all started. And to be able to analyze it and critique it on its own merits, and not just look at it as a single part to a series that's now going on 13 games and counting. And I think that Kingdom Hearts has really stood the test of time on its own merits alone. And I think it will continue to stand the test of time. With that said, though, I want to thank you all for watching, and I want to give a special thanks to all the people who have been watching up till now. It really means a lot to see your comments and your feedback on my videos, and I hope that I can continue to put out more videos that you'll enjoy in the future. And everyone who's just tuning in now, I want to say welcome, and I implore you to check out my older videos. The quality on them may not quite be as good as this one, but I'm getting a little bit better each time. Next time around, I might, do something about all the reverb in this room, for instance. But it really does mean a lot to, see you guys watching my videos and to hear that you're enjoying them. And I hope to put out another video soon. And once it comes out, I hope you all enjoy it as well. So, till next time.